Hello, and welcome to the Books Uncovered podcast, a podcast from Fulcrum Publishing where we explore the world of books and the people who make up the publishing industry. I'm Kateri Kramer, Fulcrum's marketing director, and I'm joined by my co-host, Kelly Jervey. How are you, Kelly?
I'm good. Beautiful weather here in Wisconsin. No snow on the ground, unlike last time. So I can't wait to get in my yard and read a good book in a couple months when it's actually warm enough to do that.
That's awesome. Are you going to have a garden this year?
I am not the gardener. I have a black thumb, but my husband loves making cherry tomatoes and jalapenos and all that kind of stuff.
You'll benefit from the garden.
I will benefit from the garden. How about you? Are you planning anything?
Yeah, I'm getting antsy to get out there. I planted a little bit of lettuce and some pansies and Johnny jump ups and stuff so far, but I'm ready to get the big stuff out there. So I just gotta hold on because we're expecting apparently more snow again. So can't get too antsy. Yeah. Well, today we're super excited because we are joined by Claudia Johnson. Claudia is a nationally recognized advocate for free speech and social justice. In 1993, she was honored with the inaugural Penn Newman's Own First Amendment Award, presented by Paul Newman for her extraordinary efforts to restore banned literary classics to Florida classrooms. And again, in the 2022 PEN America at 100 exhibition at the New York Historical Society. She continues to fight book banning, recently helping to reinstate banned books in Virginia Beach classrooms and libraries. And just recently, on the 14th of March, the second edition of Stifled Laughter was republished. Welcome to the podcast, Claudia.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, we're so excited to talk to you, especially because of everything that's been in the news and how important Stifle Laughter is. Can you I think it would be hard to not realize how much banned books are coming up in the news, but can you give listeners just a little bit of an overview of like what's going on and why it's so bad that we're taking books out of classrooms and libraries?
It is the worst it's ever been in the country. That is absolutely true. In fact, I saw today on Instagram and reposted that 1,267 books were pulled from classrooms and libraries in 2022. And this year started out, much, much worse. Right-wing money, extremist right-wing money, is funding and fueling organizations like Moms for Liberty, a misnomer if ever I've heard one. And so last week, since I've gotten back from Seattle in the book launch, one Mom for Liberty in Martin County, Florida, went in and complained about, I think it was 78 books, and without any process. There used to be process in place, but the schools they pulled all 78, and they're out of circulation now. So that's sort of the order of things, but it's also really important for people to understand that book banning is just the first front of their offensive. And it is actually, it's not so much, it's about books for all of us who love books, but it is to create chaos and make the public so angry at schools that they will begin to want to privatize. And once it's privatized, public education is the bedrock of democracy. And once it's privatized, the theocracy can move in and they can impose their moral views, which they're doing as they ban books. But their end game is taking down the democracy and replacing it with theocracy. And they've stated that, publicly, and they're executing it in plain sight. So it's kind of horrifying when you see their big picture. And it's emanating from Hillsdale College, this little tiny college in Michigan, which is ironic because Michigan is now completely blue. But it is a right-wing think tank that is and that those marching orders, exactly what DeSantis is doing in Florida, what Governor, I've repressed his name in Texas, has done. And so, it is a full-on offensive, and books are the leading edge, because that culture war is creating the chaos and the anger. And I'm a little angry myself, so I have to kind of watch that. But anyway, but that's really the synopsis of what's happening and how serious it is.
Well, but I also think like it's within our right to be angry about this, because it's not okay, and it's problematic for the teachers and librarians who are attempting to explain to students why they can't read a book they want to read.
Absolutely.
And it's problematic for the kids who don't have access to those books anymore in a public system. Like, they might not have access if they don't live in a home where books are readily available. This might be a hard question to answer, but in your experience, are the people banning the books actually reading them before they ban them?
Almost
or they
never.
ask for them to be banned?
My long experience is, over 3 decades in 3 different towns and 3 different fundamentalist parents complaining. And that Mom for Liberty didn't read those 78 books. No, this is the horrifying thing, is that they banned books wholesale and have not read them. And by the way, that might being a little angry is like the understatement of the year, because I'm so passionate and I'm so enraged by all of it, and we do need that fuel to take action. Here is a heartening statistic. In 22, the CNN did a poll about Americans and banning books. 80% of Americans are opposed, but there's this glaring gap between those of us in the 80 percenters, as I like to call us. And we could solve this with sheer numbers alone, but we've got to find ways to convert our, opposition to book banning into effective action. So angry is good on our side. It is a culture war, but it's not insignificant. It's very significant. And so every victory matters. So when I help reinstate books here in Virginia Beach in 2022, and we all spoke out in October 2021, we were so all 6 books were reinstated after they went through careful review. Committees, they were so great. The committees included a librarian, a teacher, a parent, and a student. So, and each book got its own committee. And so all 6 were reinstated, though genderqueer was pulled later, in the dark of night. And but it was one of 3 victories in Virginia. So, I know I have dystopia overload, and we really, all that hits the news are the horror stories. But people really, really need to know that where we're showing up and speaking out in large numbers, safety in numbers, power in numbers, and that books do get reinstated. So, I know it's almost so bad that it's tempting just to go, just wait it out, but we can't. And in many, many, many places in the States, books are being reinstated.
What are you finding is like the main content that is triggering a book to be banned, or is it too hard? Is it just such this wide breadth that it's hard to put it into category?
This is another way that it's different now, that from when I, fought it decades ago. They're targeting LGBTQ, they're targeting communities of color, and they do it in the name of saving children from pornography, or ponography, as they said in Lake City, as I say in laughter. They're going after any sexual little, paragraph. And of course, social media is the accelerant. And so they're seeing this online, and then they're freaking out, and I don't know if the parents who are doing this, if they understand that they are pawns in this greater scheme. I wish someone would tell them. So maybe I'm glad. I don't think they'll be watching this, but anyway, yeah, it's just awful. So, but those are the arenas. But it is, I don't know. It's they're singling out already marginalized communities in the United States that the rabid right, I mean, they're rabid to erase. I mean, that's very much what's going on, is trying to erase, communities of color and LGBTQ. And now, I mean, probably the most hostile is toward trans, which is why I was very disappointed that Genderqueer got reinstated. And it is a wonderful graphic novel. I mean, I have a relative who is trans, and I didn't understand that, in the process. And Genderqueer, it's so moving, and it takes you, as any great book does, into the very heart of the Maya Kobabe. Anyway, so
and they create empathy, right? Like that, and that's what we want for our children, is to feel connected to communities that they might not be physically a part of, so that when they go out into the world and they are part of those communities, there's like that embedded empathic response to people that are not like them. And that's being stripped, which is,
it is
awful.
even I mean, I remember, I think I'm never surprised, but by any of this, because I've been through it so many times, but I never cease to be shocked. But I remember when it was probably about a year or so ago that DeSantis banned, dozens of math books because they had empathy in them, because these books counseled other students, if they were good at math, to understand that other students might have math anxiety. And I mean, I was like, empathy, oh my God. And what's so shocking about it, I mean, is that, study after study, book after book has shown that children and people who are empathic are happier, they live longer, they have less disease. And so the people who are pulling it, you're not allowing their own children to develop empathy, they're disadvantaging them. But I really just want to scream, they're not the only parents. They're not. And they are a tiny segment of the population. And that's something that we parents and grandparents have to really take up arms to fight, and to keep making the point that you're not the only parent, and you have a right to ask for an alternative text for your child, but you have no right to take away learning from the rest of the children. But again, you have to look at that larger horrible game plan they have to understand why. But empathy, so I would say empathy is another category that they are going after, which just blows my mind. I remember when the critic Roger Ebert, received his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and his speech was, it's worth looking up. It is so beautiful, because he said he's always thought of great films as empathy machines. And it's not just, it's what you said. He said it allows him to walk in the shoes of a woman or a gay person, or, a person of a different race. And that is what connects us, and instead of divides us. But they've got the whole thing turned upside down, is that, books divide us, which is just the opposite. And I love that empathy machines, because same for great books, good books, and so forth. Then they're also going after any book that has a hint of sexuality in teenagers, in the story. I mean, we know the list. Lawn Boy is one of the famous examples. Anyway, but they are crippling their old children, but they have no right to cripple mine. And that's we all have mother bears in us, right? So anyhow, but I think we need t-shirts that, you're not the only parents. I mean, I wish somebody would start an organization, parents and grandparents for freedom, and say we have moms for freedom, moms for liberty. And it's just, moms for freedom to read. And then a big march on Washington, but I'm just way too old to organize it. So anyway, but it should be done.
Well, hopefully other moms are listening to this and they can take up the banner.
Absolutely. Somebody should, and it can begin as a grassroots thing, in your own hometown, if it's happening, and it's happening in everyone's hometown, basically. I found over my long experience that and Stifle will tell the story, is that it's where a grass coalition of like-minded people was organized on the local level and packed at least one half of the school board meeting room. And when that did not happen, books get banned. When we show up and speak out, generally books get reinstated. But then there's this whole clandestine thing where they're just going into libraries, and now public libraries, which is really shocking. So I think DeSantis's next thing after he guts the press, holding him accountable, which is the new law that's going to be voted on this week. It's, I don't know, it just goes on and on, but.
Yeah. So, you've touched on this a little bit, but what have you noticed, any differences between, like you said, you've been doing this for decades, early on when you started fighting book bans, and any differences you notice now? You talked a little bit about the types of books that are being banned have changed, but have you noticed anything else?
You mean about how it was back then?
Yeah.
So the first book banning case that I heard about and was totally shocked by, horrified by, was in Lake City, and it was Miller's Tale and Lysistrata, and they are my two favorite works of literature. And that was coming from right-wing think tanks as well, but they went after this fundamentalist parent, wanted to ban the high school humanities textbook because it had Lysistrata in it. And they were after the women's lib stuff. And it's just hard to believe that in '86, that was really, seriously? I was raised by a first wave feminist. So that I'm just, I don't know. I say in Stifle that my forehead began to slant backwards. I'd slapped it so often in disbelief, and I continued to do that. But it did have a very different character. There was certainly an assault on the gay population because of the AIDS, and, Reagan didn't help much with that. He helped demonize that. But in terms of banning books, a lot of it was the same, immoral or foul language or whatever, they're just sweet little ears just can't bear hearing it. So, so it's come now, it is a much more dark thing, because they really, really, really are out to erase populations and sanitize from history and in the present day. So I know what it was that DeSantis is. The other thing he's doing is that he's going to the Don't Say Gay law is only for elementary school children, and now he's going to extend it all the way through high school. So it's just a full-on assault. I lived in Florida for 30 years. I count my lucky stars every day that I don't live there or in Texas. And, I may never go back to Florida because it's so, and it's so awful, but I also know I have a lot of friends in Florida and they are horrified. So, say, come to Virginia. We're still a little bit purple, but
yeah. Well, what advice would you give to somebody who's facing censorship wherever they might live?
As a writer, or having books generally?
As a parent, in their community, they're noticing that books are being pulled from the shelves.
Again, I would find out if it's through the school board, and pick up the phone and call. This is, I don't want to give away the plot, but that's how I arced. And when I got the phone call that I had won the Penn Newman's Own Award, the executive director of the National Coalition Against Censorship told me on the phone that I got the award because I had arced. So in Lake City, I was so horrified, I was combative. Not a great strategy. Not that if I'd been a sweetheart, it would have made any difference. But, she said I arced. And the way that I arced is I realized you can't count on anything but political pressure. And that the most impactful form of that is parents, librarians, writers, friends, neighbors, grandparents. You call everyone who's a like-minded person. And I did that in Live Oak. And there were 3 of us in the school board meetings in Lake City. And we packed standing room only, the school board, our side of it. And the fundamentalist parent, Zeke Townsend and his flock, packed the other. But it was absolutely the courage to show up and speak out. And in Virginia Beach, I just wanted to make the observation, very important observation, that the First Amendment protects students' right to receive information, as upheld in the PICO decision. But in Virginia Beach, so I thought that was important to say. But there were more than a dozen high school students who witnessed, and it's just such a beautiful scene, because we had to sit 8 people, 8 seats between us, because it was the height of the pandemic, masked. So not everyone could be in, but when you have to sign up ahead of time to speak, and when their names were called, one after another, high school student walked in and spoke passionately about the positive effect that these books had in their lives, either to enlighten them or because they were gay, and they felt they were seen, which is such a thing you'll hear over and over again. And then after they were through, because they got to speak first, this right-wing nut just ran up the aisle, and she was freaked out. And she said, "They're organized. They have a Facebook page." And I think why she was freaked out is they held a rally in front of the school board building. And I didn't know, because I got there so early, because I wanted a seat inside. But they staged a big rally. And that kind of thing is beautiful and powerful. And it also feels really good. So I would say this to anyone, if it sounds scary, safety in numbers for one thing, but if it sounds scary, then take a moment to contemplate what it's going to be like if our democracy is destroyed and we no longer have the right to speak out, and then you reach for the phone and, you call somebody and say, what are we going to do? Just like Susan Davis, one of my co-plaintiffs in Lake City, called me on March 10th. and that's what got the ball, rolling. So
the consequences are scarier than what
you
might need to do to stop those consequences.
Yeah, you have to overcome that. But it is scary to speak out. I was singled out number in the paper and letters to the editor. I was a Berkeley liberal, on and on and on. But you know what? You just keep your eye on the principle of the thing, and your own children or your friends' children's right to receive information. Or the theocracy is in Texas and Florida, it's there because the curriculum and the marching orders are happening. They're taking away academic freedom. They're taking away tenure. They're taking away certification of K through 12 teachers because they want to install bots, in the classroom that'll, carry the theocracy water. So that's happening before our eyes in those states. And as many people are saying, that's going to happen on the national level. If, for example, if DeSantis were president, then it would become national, the laws. So that's about as horrifying as it gets, in my opinion.
I think it's also just like a lot of people might not be as in tune with the dangers of book banning, how prevalent it's become. And Stifled Laughter becomes a primer for how we fight book banning and censorship. And also, you're really honest about the consequences it has on you personally and on the advocate, and how do you maybe mitigate some of those things and work through it. But you're also really funny. And the book is like,
God bless you.
So, but it doesn't lighten how important it is. What does America need beyond books like Stifled Laughter, so that people who are passionate about reading and books and giving literature to children, like, what other resources do we need? I mean, frankly, I think Stifled Laughter is one of the best ones that they can find, because it's inspirational. It's practical in the sense of, like, we're learning from your story about how to specifically fight banned books. And then it's an eye-opener for people who haven't done that yet, and what it takes and how intense it is. But what else does America need?
We've got the beautiful organizations like ACLU and the American Library Association and the National Coalition Against Censorship, and contributing to those is absolutely fantastic and important. And they are so, if you say you go to the National Coalition Against Censorship, and Leanne Katz, the executive director, I mean, I had her on speed dial. I mean, and she advised me all the way through in person, and she was the director. And I think that Chris Finan would do that as well. But if you go to their website, ncac.org, it is a wealth of things to do, that you can do and so forth and all of it. But and write letters and make contributions. But I see our side of the equation not doing the Moms for Liberty, not doing, the impassioned parental organizations that, that need to be done. So once again, if anyone's listening and organize that would be fantastic. And, a march for the freedom to read, a march on Washington, because political power works. But I mean, it's sort of all of the above, but if it happens in your town, start with picking up the phone and calling. And the thing is, it is scary, but when there are 30 of you at a school board meeting, it's so inspiring, and it's American democracy at its best. Last thing, and equally important, is go to a progressive website anytime there is an election, and you can find in your locale, you put in your zip code and it tells you who running for school board, what they stand for and what they don't. And we've got to take back the local scene. We've got to take back our school boards, and they've been way ahead of us on this, doing that, getting ahead of it. And I mean, at every level of the election, make sure you vote for somebody who is passionate about the freedom to read and the freedom of speech. So, I think it, but just go to ncac.org and just see its page after page and guidance. They give you templates for letters to send. I mean, it's just fantastic. But if you don't do it on the local level, it's not going to make a difference.
It's a great place to start, and it feels more accessible because it's the
Exactly.
communities that we're a part of.
And if people would put together a coalition of friends and neighbors and all of that, which is easier to do than you would think. I mean, once we got the ball rolling in Live Oak, we had so many people on board. And once that's done, I mean, I just sort of think of it as a national constellation. Then, maybe we can come together as you're not the only parents or whatever, moms and grandmoms and I mean, parents and grandparents for freedom to read. And I just would love to see that level of movement, because, the national organizations are so helpful and important. But what really, really gets the books back on the shelves is at the local level.
Yeah. Speaking of communities, when we were in the kind of initial stages of getting Stifled Laughter ready for its second edition publication, we found right away that there was a lot of support from authors who had their books banned wherever it was. Do authors have a specific obligation or responsibility to fight book banning that maybe the person in the general public does not have?
I think, I don't know if it's an obligation. I would think they would be the most inspired to want to fight back, not only for their own book, but for all the books that are being banned. Obligation sounds perhaps a little obligatory.
Yeah, prescriptive.
But writers, I've seen so many places that one of the writers banned, and it may have been Evison, it may have been Lawn Boy was one of the ones removed, but put back in Virginia Beach. And he got on as a speaker, and I don't know where his home is, but he called in and talked to the school board members and the people there and the students about the book and his intentions and all of that. So, I think authors showing up and speaking out may be the most potent thing, definitely. And, they have every reason to do it. I honestly wish someone would ban stifled laughter, because it makes a book an instant bestseller.
Yeah. Well, the way things are going, you might be on track for that. Right. We'll see. But
I do, you look at Banned Book Week and all of this. I mean, the people who are giving the speeches are authors. Yeah. And I think that's the very heart of it. So I will join those ranks, when I can, if I can.
Yeah. And I think it's so great, like just listening to some of the things that you've said, like authors and students and parents. There are just so many different sides that can speak out against book bans in that way.
And honestly, what was absolutely a couple of students spoke out at the PAC school board meeting in Live Oak in Suwannee County, but I mean, it was more than a dozen walking in the room and down the aisle to the podium. And sometimes their hands were shaken, but they were, and you only had 3 minutes, and they had this huge digital clock on the wall with bright red numbers. It's very intimidating. But there were so many of them that freaked out the right wing nut, but it was one of the most inspiring things I've witnessed, truly. I mean, it was just wonderful. So, I mean, the students are directly affected, the authors are directly affected, but communities, our educational system is affected. It's as we know, I mean, once you know their big game plan. But yeah, I mean, if an author who doesn't speak out, well, everyone's has a different makeup, and not everybody wants to or can overcome, the fear of being targeted and all of that. And so, I far be it from me to try to force someone to speak out when they're not comfortable with it, but they can maybe call somebody who might be comfortable with it, like a big mouth like me, and then, get the ball rolling. But in Live Oak, it was just fascinating how quickly, and people called people. And, it was just this exponential thing. And frankly, it was the most compelling speakers were teachers. It's the penultimate chapter of Stifled is actually a verbatim transcription of the audio tape of the meeting. And with, of course, I render my own thoughts, but what they said, and Susie Tuttle, who was the most moving, I mean, she said, "I'm not here as a teacher, I'm here as a parent on behalf of my children's right to choice and right to read, the choice of what to read." And that was what the teachers, she in particular, I think that swayed. We had 4 conservatives and 1 liberal on the school board in little old Suwannee County, the heart of darkness. No, Lake City's the heart of darkness. But I mean, the North Florida can be, I'll get some angry letters about it. Anyway, but it really comes down to having parents and students that they have a choice. Again, a parent can say, I don't want them to read Bluest Eye, by Toni Morrison, but they have just no right. And that's what we have to keep hammering home. You have no right to deprive my child and my grandchildren from reading these books.
Yeah. Well, this has been a wonderful discussion.
You've
given me so much to chew on and think about, and different things that I can maybe even do in my own community.
Well, and I would recommend to listeners and to you guys that I'd start making those calls now and get that your pod in place, because it's coming to a school near you. I mean, it is, if it hasn't already. So thank you for, obviously you can tell how passionate I am, but, I've invested so much of my life, and I wouldn't have done otherwise because the principles involved are so sacred.
Well, we've come to one of my favorite parts of the podcast.
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
We love to talk about books that we like to read. And so we've got our book recommendation question for this week. We're doing something a little different. We're picking our favorite author who's had a book banned and some of the books that they've written.
Well, being the scofflaw that I am, I would say there are 3 authors and one book in particular by each. Can I go that direction?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's because humor is so important, and humor is so important in defeating this grim, book banning mindset. Because it does sort of restore perspective and so forth. So I had to go with my 3 favorite and towering works of comedy. And even though Lysistrata is not a book, it's a play, and it is revolutionary. It does promote women's lib. But what the censors miss is that they're withholding sex to achieve peace. The Peloponnesian Wars have gone on, I think, 30 years, and but it is so riotously funny. And one of the reasons a fundamentalist preacher wanted to ban it in Lake City is, and this one husband is just so, starved for sex that and the wife sort of leads him on, knowing that she's not about to give in. And finally, in the translation in Lake City, he exclaims, God damn the man who invented perfume, because their last thing was, I got to go get perfume. And, so when they said it takes the Lord's name in vain. I'm like, it's Zeus. It was 411 BC. You cannot reason with these people and so forth. But it is as fresh today as when it was written, before the birth of Christ. And so that is number 1. And Miller's Tale is close, but I'll just put that on the side because it changed my life, and it has that ability. But then I know it's controversial, but Huckleberry Finn. And, it's, again, a book that I read several times in my life. And it is what people miss, what the censors miss, and a lot of readers miss, is Twain wrote it as a satire on racism and a satire on religion of the day. And the funniest line in the book, in my opinion, is Huck says, my uncle's sermons were free and they were worth it. I just went crazy. And, yes, it does have the N word 213 times. And I understand how painful that must be, but that is because he's satirizing the hideous racism of the day. So, it has been banned since the day it was published, and I think 1855. It's been banned every year since. It's just, and it will continue. And now, of course, the pressure is from the left, and it's that thing. it's looked at it as a satire, and what he intended it to be. It is a masterpiece. And Hemingway said American literature started with Huck Finn, and there wasn't anything before. And I think he said, and there's been nothing as good since. So it's, I don't think it'll ever get read in schools, but it should be. So my third is the other amazing towering work. This is an autographed copy that Joseph Heller signed at Florida State. I had strep throat, so I couldn't go, but my son Ross went and said, my mom, and again, it's just, I was on a train in Spain when I was an undergraduate doing the Uriel Pass thing. Mm-hmm. And I was shrieking with laughter so loud. I mean, everybody's just like looking at me. I mean, it's been banned so many times because it's anti-war, but it's also, it's a send up again. It's a satire of the McCarthy era, so much, which, we're living through again now. Anyway, so all of them are revolutionary. Absolutely. All three of them are revolutionary in their way. And, we could use a revolution in thinking the way things are going. So those are mine.
Those are great. What about you, Kelly?
Well, I picked Margaret Atwood, Handmaid's Tale and the Testaments. I really love the way that Margaret Atwood, her writing is just very thought-provoking, and gets us to contemplate society, things that are happening in our world. And I think her characters are really relatable, and kind of asks you to think about, like, what would I do in this situation, and kind of reflect on what's happening in the book. But in Handmaid's Tale, it was written in response to like the political trends in the 1970s, including the Iranian Revolution. And it's just really, I like how we can reflect on, like I said, things happening in the world, and books can do that for us. And, even though it was written about something that happened in the 1970s, or like in response to that, it's just amazing how relevant it still is today.
Well, especially now with everything going on in Iran, like it's like unfortunate, but re-relevant, I guess.
Yes.
Oh, re-relevant is a wonderful word. Yeah. Yeah. It's like stifled is re-relevant.
It is re-relevant.
Alas,
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a great choice. And I think a lot of people don't realize that Margaret Atwood was banned. Many of her books were banned.
Yeah. And Handmaid's Tale was an astonishing experience when I read it. So, but that was just shortly before Roe was, codified by the Supreme Court. So, here we are again.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, how about you, Kateri? What did you pick?
The author that I picked, just because of the sheer number of books that he's had banned, is Ernest Hemingway. He's one of my favorites. I think not only just because of the different books that are available and how classic they are, but taking away that type of literature, that type of writing from a student that can show them that you don't have to write like Faulkner or Shakespeare or all of these other people that are considered like excellent writers. Like you could also be Hemingway and be writing these short but beautiful choppy sentences. I think that's kind of a travesty. Plus, I think just his ability to tell stories and open up the world and think differently about things is pretty incredible. So Hemingway was my pick.
Yeah. And I mean, I could have just gone with Twain because, so many of his other books that I've read also. Yeah. I love Letters from the Earth, and which is brilliant. And Tom Sawyer has been, banned again and again. But, if we keep banning things because they make us, I mean, where is it written that we can't be offended? I mean, we have to get over it. And if we, ban, even no matter how uncomfortable a book makes us feel, there's a line in Huck Finn where he uses the phrase, it's the most jackass bargain we ever made. If we give up it in terms, and go with what doesn't make us uncomfortable,
Yeah. Good art is supposed to evoke emotion, and being offended is an emotion that you can have, and it's okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it is okay. It is okay to be offended. I am offended 24/7 by the book banning that I'm.
Exactly.
So can we ban them?
Right. Exactly. Well, thank you so much. This was such an amazing experience. Where can listeners find you online?
You mean like my author website?
Website, social media, that kind of thing.
They can go on Facebook to Claudia Hunter Johnson. That's the public one, versus friends and so forth. My author's page is claudiahunterjohnson.com, and it has all the work I've done. And what's really fun about that is all the reviews of Stifled Laughter, past and present. So I haven't put book reporter yet, the latest review. And then I have 2 podcasts that Project Popsicle in Tallahassee did with me. One was with my writing partner Matt about how do you collaborate, and that whole process of co-writing, which is mysterious and wonderful. And then the other one is really about the center of my work as a writer and probably as a person, but I broke the theory that human connection is as important as conflict in the stories we tell, in the books, stories we tell, and in our lives. And anyway.
Perfect. That's great. People can find you. And obviously the book is available online and at indie bookstores, Barnes & Noble, that kind of thing. Absolutely. Thank you again for joining us.
Well, you're so welcome. And, I have an author's page on Amazon. So, you guys have helped get the word out. So thank you.
Of course. No problem.
I don't know. your beautiful cover makes me happy to this day.
I'm so glad.
It is. I have the previous editions, and this is the best.
Oh, I'm so glad.
But thank you. I could not be happier. You guys have worked so hard on it, and I'm really grateful.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
We're so happy to be working with you. So